for joining us. Good evening. The post-flood rebuild has only just begun in many BC communities, and there's even more rain in the forecast. As Cameron McIntosh shows us, Merritt, a city of more than 7,000, has people returning home today, and these are people who have already lost so much.
This mud silt is layered on everything, even in the building.
Where do you even start? Erin Parks has been asking herself that very question for a few days.
How overwhelming is this?
Yeah, it is. It's very overwhelming, but we just have to stay positive.
Her garden and landscape business completely flooded out. That's next spring's inventory.
So here, you can tell the water was here.
And this is her office. So to be facing the prospect of even more water.
We're just going to rebuild right now, and that's what we plan to. We hope to, but we got to clean up, so there's a lot of work.
So you really don't want more water?
No, we don't.
All through the flood zone, a sense of dread. In Merritt, where the water system is still contaminated, about 1,500 people were allowed back. Not everyone wanted to go.
We're just out because we have no water, we're going to have nothing there.
Not far from Merritt, near Princeton, snow today. And a plea from the mayor for the military to come in.
I've put out a request for labor. We're trying to get people's homes cleaned out so that they don't freeze up.
While the forecast is not calling for as much rain as the first storm, it could still be enough to make things worse. With the help of the military, Abbotsford has spent the last several days shoring up its dikes.
As of today, the main dike repair is about 80% complete. We expect another 5 feet of height to be added to the dike prior to the weather event anticipated for Thursday.
Meanwhile, 36-year-old Brett Diedrichs has been identified as the 5th landslide victim. As some damaged highways reopen to essential traffic only, others will take months to repair. Limited rail service is set to resume. The province and Red Cross will now offer evacuees $2,000 in assistance, as the public safety minister warns.
The next 9 or 10 days could be quite challenging.
Under that big tree, that's a table of our plants.
Parks just wants to get through whatever is coming.
The buildings are still here, but we have a lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do indeed. Let's talk more now about what's to come. Our Isabel Regam is live tonight on the Sumas Prairie talking with residents who are gutting flooded homes. Isabel, they're bracing for more rain. So how does that change their plans to get moving on rebuilding and repairing?
Anita, at this point, it's one day at a time for many. They are still working to tear out everything that's been damaged from their homes. And when it comes to rebuilding, that's still on hold. Just a few days ago, I would be standing in about 3 feet of water, and the water is receding. But they're saying that they know that today may have been the very last dry day for the rest of the week.
They're not thinking about tomorrow right now. Most of these people are thinking about today. How can we kind of get our house cleaned up? You know, when your house is totally decimated by the flood, you're just thinking, how can we get that stuff cleaned up so we can move ahead? So we're just going to take it as we come. I don't think they can be more devastated than they have been. So in that way, they're just going to keep going and cleaning up.
Water was about up here. About 40 inches to the main level. So yeah, everything was ruined. All the furniture and all the whole kitchen has to be redone. All the floors. Yeah, lots of work. It's a bit overwhelming.
The water came to just past the windows is where the water line was outside. And so it drained pretty fast, but you can tell that's pretty significant damage, and we're higher than most families, so pretty awful.
And if it does rain, what happens to this space? What do you anticipate?
Well, I mean, if it did, I doubt it's going to flood again like it did. It doesn't seem to be that bad, and I guess we'll just kind of let it go down. We'll get the pumps going because, again, it's not going to cause any more damage.
And Isabel, I know that area is full of farmers, many dairy, but also vegetable and blueberry growers. What might even more rain mean for those crops?
Well, I spoke to the family of this blueberry farm right next to me, and they say the damage is already so bad that the upcoming season is lost, even maybe the next one following that. And at this point, they just say that more rain, unlike those that we heard previously that said, you know, how much more can be damaged, they say there is more damage to be done possibly with this more rain.
The amount of mud that's stored on it, I don't think that's going to help in washing off, but yeah, it can actually make it worse because our roots are pretty naked. So if there's any more water or mud coming from either or side, it's actually going to just wash off our roots, and that's going to make our roots naked, and it's actually going to just destroy the plants. So we have no idea. I mean, this has never happened. So a lot of people aren't even aware of this, the damage that's going to be caused because of this. I mean, these are just based in theories and talking to people. There's no significant and solid facts about what the damage is going to be like. You can only hope for this to bounce back if the water helps. But again, we're not sure because this has never happened in like years.
Anita, the family says at this point there are so many unknowns that everyone is just watching carefully, and they won't know the true impact until the next rainstorm comes in and touches down.
Yeah, and many of the vegetable farmers in that area and just east of there toward Chilliwack would be harvesting right now. A lot of those crops are lost, including Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, millions of dollars worth of food there. Thanks, Isabel, reporting live tonight in Abbotsford. And Johanna is here to give us a better idea of what these people should expect. Jo, with this dump of rain, can we expect more flooding?
As we keep hearing, our confidence in the forecast has grown. We know what's coming out of the sky starting in the next 24, 36 hours. Still hard to say exactly what the impact will be. Problematic for flooded and vulnerable areas is the wording that both BC River Forecast and Environment Canada is using. I want to show you what we're watching. The next atmospheric river is gathering strength in the Western Pacific. It is going to be making its way towards the West Coast. Here's a look at it on the satellite. Tapping into subtropical moisture once again, and it will be basically hitting the south coast and northern Vancouver Island in the next 24 hours. So special weather statements in place for the Fraser Valley for 40 to 80 millimeters, Metro Vancouver included, but the bullseye is actually more towards North Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast. That's where 150 millimeters is expected. So just a special weather statement. You know, even Environment Canada's wording, without the storm last week, this would be what we call a regular fall storm. So response from rivers possible. And in fact, the BC River Forecast Center has reissued high stream advisories for the entire coastal areas and maintained the flood warning for the Sumas River. So here's a quick look at those rainfall totals just through to Friday morning. You can see those yellows and reds. That's the 40 to 80 millimeter bullseye. We're also getting high snow levels. So melting snow also going to be a story and a factor for all of these watersheds. So again, Anita, we know there's going to be impact. Hard to say exactly what there will be, but any rain is really the last thing that people need right now.
No kidding. Thanks, Jo.
You're welcome.
And if more flooding does happen, there's worry more animals could die. We now know about 500 cattle have died so far as a result of the water level in Abbotsford and Yarrow. Over the last week, 62 farms on the Sumas Prairie have been under evacuation orders. The BC Dairy Association says its preliminary assessment shows more than a quarter of the 23,000 farm animals in the area were evacuated to other farms in the region. The rest are still there. There's also fear the number of dead could go up because they need to be euthanized because of health complications. Now, to put it into perspective, the Sumas Prairie is south of Highway 1 in Abbotsford, right along the border with the U.S. And if we move over east and a little bit north, still south of Highway 1, just before you hit Cultus Lake, that's where Yarrow is, and it's technically part of Chilliwack. Joel Ballard went there and tells us the community efforts to help those hit hard by flooding have really kept things from getting worse.
Many properties in Yarrow are underwater. Across the street, flooding on the Sumas Prairie ignored municipal borders. In the midst of the destruction, the community came together.
People by the hundreds are asking, what can we do?
Everyone wanted to help, but didn't know how. So 4 local churches launched a flood relief community care center.
This is not our area of expertise on any level, but we're doing what we can, and we're excited to see how the community's been so participatory.
It all started organically. As water poured in, community members jumped into action and started sandbagging, unable to wait for help from the city, the province, or the military.
You need initiation, you need to think ahead. The only reason the sand and the sandbags got here and that we had people bagging on city property with those sandbag machines was because somebody called and got sand dropped in our church parking lot first.
Now through the center, hundreds are offering resources of all kind, from help with physical labor to childcare, counseling to financial aid.
Last week there was a grocery shortage, and so all of a sudden people started sharing food, and so then now there's a food bank in town at Yarrow MB Church, and man, if anybody needs anything, you can walk in there and you come out with milk and eggs and produce.
For those who live here, seeing neighbors help neighbors isn't the least bit surprising.
This is very much the fruit of the last 50 years of our elders working hard to maintain this culture in Yarrow of people caring for each other. And so you walk in the street and you say thank you to someone for volunteering or whatever they're doing right now, and everyone just says, well, this is what we do in Yarrow.
As the initial emergency seems to have subsided, both men know some of the hardest work is yet to come, but they agree it won't be a solo effort. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Yarrow, Chilliwack.
Let's look at our border crossings now. There's been some confusion and hefty fines for some people traveling to the U.S. for essential supplies during this disaster. The federal government has waived its COVID-19 test requirement for those who need to cross for food and gas. But as John Hernandez reports, some travelers say border agents didn't get the memo.
I was in tears. I was a bit frightened. I didn't know what was going to happen to me.
Marlene Jones thought she was doing a good deed, but it could cost her more than $5,000.
And I would have thought that for someone my age, they would have shown a bit more compassion.
With limits on gas and some pumps going dry in BC, she decided to cross the border near her South Surrey home to fuel up.
I thought, well, gee, I'm retired. I have time on my hands. I'm going to go across the line, get some gas, and save the gas here for people who don't have that option.
On Sunday, Ottawa announced British Columbians are allowed to grab emergency supplies like gas and food in the U.S. without showing a negative COVID-19 PCR test on the way back. But after her 10-minute trip, Canadian border agents told Jones that she was breaking the rules.
Well, actually, I was thinking, am I starting to have memory issues? You know, I'm at that age, and I thought, did I misunderstand this?
She was slapped with a $5,700 fine, and she wasn't the only one.
They said, you're the 9th person this morning, and I was there early in the morning, that we've ticketed.
Today, Ottawa confirmed dozens of fines were mistakenly handed out because of a miscommunication.
That direction was given to the Border Service agencies, but clearly some clarification was required. That's now been given.
People who were ticketed in the past 2 days will have their cases reviewed.
The message is that any tickets that have been issued will be revoked.
But the Canadian Border Services Agency contends that not everyone was innocent.
There are still individuals who were subjected to fines because they did truly enter the United States for a non-discretionary and a non-essential purpose, and therefore required the test.
As for Marlene Jones, she likely won't have to pay her fine, but she says she won't get back the time or the stress.
And the way they're talking to you, you almost forget that you are in the right. It's quite intimidating.
John Hernandez, CBC News, Surrey.
And we know there are a lot of people without overland flood insurance in the areas affected by flooding, and that's simply because they can't get it. Today, the province is stepping up with funding to help. The Red Cross is also doing more. Dan Burrett joins us live on this angle. All this aid, though, Dan, is being bolstered by British Columbians, isn't it?
Indeed. Businesses, charities, and a lot of individuals. 6,000 evacuees have registered already with the province. And strangers, it says, have opened up their homes to 1,400 people through billets. The government says emergency student financial aid and Indigenous funding is available for students at the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology and the University of the Fraser Valley, and they do not have to be paid back. It's not a loan. A group of BC businesses is offering $1 million through the Canadian Red Cross And the government is partnering with the Red Cross to provide money for thousands more people.
Funds will be provided by the Red Cross to people whose primary residences have been placed on evacuation order due to flooding. Eligible households will receive $2,000. To access these funds, evacuated British Columbians need to register with the Red Cross by calling 1-800-863-6582.
When it comes to getting around, the government is tightening up the rules. As of 8 o'clock tonight, Highway 7 will be closed between Agassiz and Mission to essential travel only. The transportation minister says food and fuel trucks are getting stuck in congestion and they need that road to be clear. But they will allow public transit buses, school buses, and charter buses through so students, teachers, and staff can get to schools. And if you want to help British Columbians who have been hit by these floods, the government asks that you donate money through trusted agencies like the Canadian Red Cross, United Way, food banks, and at BC liquor stores. Anita.
Lots of people wanting to help, Dan. Thank you. We have more coverage of the BC floods coming up later in the show, including the story of a family returning to their home still underwater.
It's been so bad.
What it looks like inside the home coming up a little later in our program. Now in Vancouver, Transport Canada says it needs a detailed removal and refloating plan from the owners of that stranded barge stuck on the rocks at Sunset Beach before it can be removed. The agency telling CBC News it also wants a survey of the hull and information about any repairs it may need before it's cleared to go. The barge's owners attempted to release it during last Tuesday's high tide, but were unsuccessful. The barge broke from its moorings and smacked into Vancouver's iconic seawall after last Monday's storm surge and high tide. Burrard Bridge was shut down that night over fears the rogue barge might collide with it. Okay, to another big story now. Next Monday, kids in BC between 5 and 11 will start to get vaccinated against COVID-19. A pediatric version of the Pfizer vaccine will be distributed across the province in the coming days. Belle Puri is live and following this story tonight. Belle, what can parents expect here in terms of the rollout plan for the shot?
Well, the campaign to get younger children in line for the vaccine has been in place for weeks. Of the 350,000 eligible children, nearly 1/3 have already been registered for a first shot. So parents of those children can expect to start getting invitations to book shots by early Monday morning. And some children will actually get their shots that day. For the 5 to 11-year-olds, there will be 2 doses, just like for adults, and they'll be given 8 weeks apart. But the dose is much smaller, only 1/3 the amount of what's given to adults.
We've spent some time prior to the approval last Friday with our pediatric colleagues across all the different disciplines to see if there's a need from their perspective to prioritize any particular group of children. And their advice to us is there's a lot of vaccine. We've got a lot of experience now running this program. Let's get these children vaccinated as quickly as possible, and that's going to be far more help than trying to triage different subgroups to arrive in front of the other.
These vaccinations for young children will happen at community clinics across the province with verbal or written consent from a parent or guardian. Health officials expect to have a good number of the children who are already registered vaccinated by Christmas. They expect to get through the rest of them by the end of January.
And Belle, health officials readily admit COVID isn't a big risk to young children. So can we get a sense of why it's such a big deal to actually get them vaccinated?
For the most part, that's true. Young children with COVID don't get too sick, but unvaccinated children are a huge risk to the rest of the population. Since last Tuesday, 457 children aged 5 to 11 have been diagnosed with the virus. Now, that's the first time the number has been under 500 since early September.
But the reality is we're going to be living with this virus for some time, in terms of years. And right now we are still in a risky period where we're seeing children get sick with this, and younger children who've not yet been able to be protected are getting sick. And it is, as I say all the time, thankfully, mostly a mild illness, but it does cause severe illness in some children. And we know that sometimes children bring it home and it can cause more severe illness in other members of the family.
Surveys have indicated 58% of BC parents are ready to have their children vaccinated. Another 18% are considering it, and the rest just aren't there yet.
Belle Puri live for us tonight. Thanks, Belle. Well, from kids in BC to adults, first dose rates have been stalling around 91% for a while. Since yesterday, 324 British Columbians have tested positive for the virus. One more person has died, and that has brought the rolling average of deaths to be at the lowest since mid-September. Hospitalizations are up by 8 to 345 people, while 115 patients are in intensive care. Well, do you have questions about the vaccine and kids? We'll have Dr. Srinivas Murthy, a pediatric infectious disease expert, to answer your questions. He'll be live with us. You can start sending them in now. bcasks@cbc.ca or give us a call, 604-662-6801. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Yesterday, I had the chance to spend the day out on the Sumas Prairie in Abbotsford, where people are cleaning up their homes after last week's devastating flooding. Here's a bit more of what we saw. Now, during emergencies like floods, many Canadians can rely on loud, clear alerts to come over their phones, but not in most of BC. After a year of disasters prompting drop-everything evacuations, David Common is finding out for some in this province that's no longer good enough.
Before these fertile fields flooded, the imminent failure of a surrounding dike was clear, but no one here got an alert on their phone. The province didn't send any either during this summer's destructive fires. In fact, BC is the only province to have never used Canada's Alert Ready system.
Every indication we have is that there are going to be more and more of these events. They're going to come when we don't expect them, and we need to have that tool ready to go when things like this happen.
And Mayor Roden got fed up waiting for the province to use the system others have for Amber Alerts, active shooters, anything where timely, urgent info is needed. So she signed her town onto an alert app. As a result, 800 citizens got warned about an approaching fire this spring.
We were able to pinpoint the neighborhood that was most affected and most at risk and let people know.
Other towns have done the same. Look at these alerts sent last week to residents in Merritt. Bailey Allen got one and got out.
You know, we have an app for everything these days. Why shouldn't we have an app for something that could save your life?
The BC government, though, had resisted, wanting to use the provincial alerts for tsunamis only, but plans to rethink that next spring. Time to work out any kinks to ensure only the right people get warnings. But Brian Frankel of the Union of BC Municipalities says all this should be all the proof needed.
Now's the time to start using this system as a tool to let the residents of British Columbia know what's coming their way.
Even if it's imperfect, direct-to-phone survival information can be a key tool.
It will lessen the likelihood that people are exposed to a terrible situation that they were last weekend.
Especially in a province facing a cascade of natural disasters and worries this could well happen again. David Common, CBC News, Sumas Prairie, BC.
And for some of those families who have been forced to flee, there's frustration and anxiety to find out what's left of their homes. Some of them haven't been able to return home, but Katie Nicholson is showing us a family of blueberry farmers returning to their property still underwater and their treacherous and emotional journey to sift through the pieces.
Between trees and half-submerged homes, Kevin Estrada threads his boat through the Sumas Flats.
Well, the risks are huge, right? I mean, you know, we've never dealt with this where, you know, you could be driving and hit a car that's underneath, railings on bridge, the gas and diesel and fertilizer that's in this ground. Lots of debris, and you get that sucked up in a jet pump and you're done.
It's a risk he's willing to take to help the people who live here.
Let's go right onto the big deck there. Put your foot there.
Like Amrit and Gershon Greywall, who haven't seen their homes since the floodwaters forced them out. They glide across the muddy lake that has engulfed the farmland. Amrit's cousin lives here. He shows him the damage in real time. And then, there it is, their house. Only one story of it visible.
I don't know, it's stuck in something.
Yeah, it's stuck in something, but it's open, I'm sure.
Their main entrance is underwater. The Greywalls are forced to break into their own home.
I'll get the ladder, just wait, okay? I got a ladder.
The first glimpse inside,
It's been so bad.
soul-crushing. "25 years after moving from India, everything she worked for under several feet of water.
The money, we can make it, no problem, right? We can make it again. But our memories, the pictures, we can't take it back.
It's like making something in a preschool for very cute things. Like, Happy Mother's Day, Mom, I love you, Mom, like that stuff, right? Everything is done in a dumpster. We hope so everything's back to normal soon.
The bottom part, I got.
Today, normal feels a long way away. Wading down the stairs, Amrit spots an unwelcome guest, a small snake, perhaps looking for higher ground. Amrit's cousin swiftly scoops it up and moves it outside. There is work to do, valuables to be packed, and food to be parceled up before it spoils. Outside, a rough estimate of how much they've lost.
That's my tow truck. This truck is for moving the blueberries.
You should probably head back and call you.
Everything they can salvage now in garbage bags. They push off, not sure when they'll see their home again, or what will be left of it when the waters recede. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Just absolutely devastating. That might be one of the worst images we've seen of a home destroyed by this flooding. Okay, turning now to Justin Trudeau's government unveiling its plans for the third term. While most of the focus today was on what was in the new Liberal mandate, as Rafi Boudjikanian reports, the throne speech addresses the need to get at the climate crisis as BC still grapples with devastating flood damage.
Today's ceremony surrounding the speech from the throne as traditional as the institution of Governor-General itself. But it was also a day for firsts. Mary Simon is the first ever Indigenous person to deliver a throne speech, speaking in Inuktitut along with the other two official languages, subtly underlining that she's been practicing her French.
La pandémie nous a aussi fait comprendre.
As she highlighted the journey toward reconciliation, the pandemic, and
this is the moment for bolder climate action.
Top of mind as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet deals with unprecedented flood damage in British Columbia.
We often talk about, building back a cleaner and greener country. I think we're also going to have to consider building back a more resilient country and a more resilient economy.
But if the recent federal elections results suggest that Canadians want cooperation in a minority government, it's not a message the official opposition heard. The Conservatives say they won't support the throne speech.
There's nothing in the throne speech that deals with inflation, the cost of living crisis, the national unity crisis.
We've said it from the beginning that our support should not be taken for granted.
Supporting might not be the best word. We will live with this empty piece of paper, gently read in 3 languages.
That vote from the bloc, however unenthusiastic, is ultimately all the feds need. But there will be other points of contention, including a debate on whether or not to continue on with a hybrid parliament, something the Conservatives also oppose, even as they refuse to disclose how many of their MPs are unvaccinated due to medical exemptions. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
All right, he's standing by, Dr. Srinivas Murthy, ready to answer your questions about the COVID-19 vaccine for kids aged 5 to 11. Do you have a question? Send it to bcasks@cbc.ca or give us a call, 604-662-6801.
New tests are underway to try to unravel the mystery of multiple sclerosis, a cruel, debilitating disease that strikes mainly women in the prime of their lives. Canada has one of the highest rates of MS in the world, and Canada's playing a role in this latest search for answers. Our medical specialist, Yves Savory, reports.
Debbie Gay does not look or act like someone with a terrifying disease. But ask her to recall the moment 4 years ago, the moment when at 23 she was diagnosed and her world changed. I cried, she says, and apologizes.
What made you the most unhappy?
Just what I thought I knew about it, that I was going to be crippled.
That's a tough one because she might be. The very thing that should protect her from disease, her immune system, periodically goes amok and attacks her central nervous system. For 2 weeks last summer, she lost the use of both her arms and her legs.
It gets worse and gets to a peak. The peak was when it got to the point that I couldn't feed myself. Then I was really upset.
Don't look at my light.
No one knows what causes MS, perhaps a virus combined with genetic susceptibility.
Okay.
There is no cure and no treatment.
Which side my finger is?
But now doctors are testing a drug which in early trials reduced flare-ups by half.
It's a very exciting medication. I would say that the chances to have improvement in the patients is over 75%. That would be my feeling.
And bring your needle down. The drug is a human protein called beta interferon, produced by genetically engineering bacteria. What it does is tamp down another interferon in her body that's been stimulating her immune system to attack.
You just inject the drug.
It's always been difficult testing a new drug for multiple sclerosis. How do you tell if it's the drug preventing an attack or just the normal ebb and flow of the disease? Well, thanks to this machine, this trial is different. These are Debbie's feet. This is the inside of Debbie's head. It's called magnetic resonance imaging.
The typical lesions that we see with multiple sclerosis are these very bright spots located in the white matter of the brain.
The scan shows there are attacks on the brain 6 times as often as the patient has symptoms. If that number drops, doctors will know the drug is working. For the next 2 years, Debbie will have to inject herself every second day. She'll have to give blood and have a scan every 6 weeks. This, even though she knows she may be in the control group, the group not getting the real drug. But it's worth it, she says. I didn't expect my life to turn out this way. This, at least, gives me a chance. Eve Savory, CBC News, Vancouver.
Provinces, including BC, are rolling out plans to get COVID vaccines in the arms of 5 to 11-year-olds. Appointment bookings opened up today in 6 more provinces, and in most places, shots will begin this week. It'll begin on Monday in BC. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson shows us, many parents and kids are all for it, but others need a little more time.
Oh, look, that's fantastic. Oh, what a great guy. Yeah.
One brave face after the next at this Toronto clinic today as Canada's COVID vaccine rollout for 5 to 11-year-olds got underway.
I really want to thank all the children that came here today. They really, truly were superheroes.
Nathan Maharaj's 9-year-old son will join their ranks in a week.
It's really a relief. It's a threshold we needed to cross to do things that we were comfortable doing before. We want to go to the aquarium. We want to go, to the zoo and be indoors and not worry.
He's in good company. A recent poll revealed just over 1/2 of Canadian parents for this new group plan to vaccinate them right away. More than a quarter say they're not sure or want to wait a bit first.
It seems that there's more hesitancy for this age group than for other groups. So I think it might be a slower start of the campaign, but that with time, more and more parents may, so the vaccine hesitancy may decrease.
Mike Romaniuk's daughter Harper turns 5 next year. He says to make the decision on whether to vaccinate her, he needs more information on just how much it would protect her against her already relatively low risk of getting seriously sick.
But I recognize on both sides there's a risk. Not doing it is a risk as well. The more data, the more confidence, I think, especially if it's tabulated or presented in a way that's easily understandable and comparable.
And experts say doctors and even peers should be patient.
Even though we have a complete confidence that it is going to be very safe, some people just really need to see that in order for it to be real.
He says uptake will likely rise as more young children get the vaccine without major side effects and as more parents see their own friends vaccinate their kids. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's bring in Dr. Srinivas Murthy now for more on kids and the COVID-19 vaccine. We're taking your questions tonight. Give us a call at 604-662-6801. Dr. Murthy, I'm going to get right to this. Catherine emailed in to ask, and Echo also emailed a similar question. For children who are turning 12 in 2022, should they wait to get their first shot in January when they would have, or when they turn 12, to have the full adult dose, or should they get the smaller dose right now?
Sure, it's a great question, and I've gotten it a lot. And so the current recommendation that NACI has put out on exactly that point is that they should get the vaccine that's available to them at the time it's available. And so getting the 11-year-old shot and then getting the second dose as the bigger 12-year-old shot is still a reasonable option.
Okay, so just to follow up here and just want to clarify, so is the dose based on weight? Like, does that matter if the 12-year-old or person turning 12 is bigger or smaller?
Yeah, vaccines are different than typical drugs, and it's dosed primarily based on the immune system more than the weight of the person. And so with kids, we use a smaller trigger for that immune system compared to adults. And so an 11-year-old should probably get the lower dose, while a 12-year-old should get the higher dose. Is that an exact threshold? Not really, but it's a threshold that the studies have been designed for.
Okay, do we expect these young kids to be hit hard with side effects? I, like a lot of people, was taken out after my first shot. Do we see stuff like that in kids?
Yeah, you'll probably see some side effects, but looking at the clinical trials that were done, they were relatively mild and they were relatively self-limited, meaning sore arms for a short period of time and then getting better. Nothing as major as the side effects that we're seeing in the adult clinical trials, where there was more fatigue and the things that you're describing.
Okay, we just had Laura ask that question, what side effects her daughter wants to know, so thank you for answering that. A colleague of ours with a child is wondering why there isn't a nasal spray for this like there is for the flu shot, and do we think there could be eventually?
Yeah, there's lots of folks looking at exactly that. We know that there's people out there who are afraid of needles, and we also think that giving a vaccine through the nose might have some added benefit for protection. But right now, the vaccines were developed for the way that they're administered with the needle. Maybe in a few years, we'll have a nasal vaccine against COVID, but for now, it's needles only.
You talked there about being scared of needles. Do you have any tricks up your sleeve to prepare kids who are afraid? Anything you do with your own children, perhaps?
Sure, it took us a few years to get where we are right now. And so lots of conversations preparing them for what to expect, maybe simulating some things, not just with a needle itself, but what they'll have to do, roll up their sleeves, sit in a chair, stay still, those kinds of things. And then at the vaccine sites themselves, I know that Dr. Henry mentioned today how they're going to be as careful as possible, being as child-friendly, stickers, toys, private areas for kids who are afraid of needles. All of these things will hopefully make it as smooth as possible, acknowledging it's not going to be perfect, and some kids will still be scared.
Tanya emailed in to ask, she says her son, 11-year-old son, has a heart murmur. She wants to know if it's safe for him to get the vaccine, and perhaps you can broaden it out for people who are immunocompromised.
Sure. In fact, those populations are the ones we're even more interested in getting vaccinated. Those who are immunocompromised, those with heart conditions, and so on. And so, yes, it's safe based on the information we have from the older population. We don't have any specific information on that specific group in the 5 to 11 range, but we would expect it to be safe in that population as well. And so by all means, if you have some comorbidity, definitely go get vaccinated.
There's a lot of talk about how kids aren't getting COVID-19 very badly. If they do get it, their symptoms aren't too bad. So people here want to know, how much difference can vaccinating this age group actually make to the spread of the disease overall here in Canada?
Yeah, that's the greatest question. And I think it's all relative. Compared to adults, and especially compared to older adults, kids are going to be less severely infected. Compared to other diseases that we already vaccinate against routinely, COVID does cause more severe disease in kids. And so with our current rates of transmission in the community in British Columbia and in Canada, the risk of getting COVID versus the risk of having something bad happen after you vaccinate from COVID weighs hugely on the side of the better way of going is getting vaccinated.
We had Bernadette call in with a question that you've already answered, so I just want to clarify, Bernadette. Dr. Murthy is saying for you to get the vaccine that's available right away for your child. So if they're turning 12 later on, right now get the vaccine available for the 11-year-old and then worry about that. Next question is, what do we know about the efficacy of vaccine in kids?
Yeah, those two groups, when we do the clinical trials of the Pfizer vaccine, shows that it's about 90% effective, which is a huge number compared to lots of the other vaccines that we use. And so from a protection of the individual child perspective, it does a great job at protecting them from getting disease, and especially against severe disease that requires hospitalization.
Michael is asking a question on email, one that I'm interested in as well, with a young child. Will there ever be a vaccine for children under 5 years old?
Yeah, that's being worked on right now. And so as people appreciate, we started with the older people, and the trials slowly worked their way downwards to get safety data and then effectiveness data in the smaller age range. And so both Moderna and Pfizer are running those studies right now in the very small children to have vaccines available for that population as well. Because while it's important to get older kids vaccinated, it's also important to get everyone vaccinated and everyone protected.
If a parent is considering a wait-and-see approach, what are the benefits of vaccinating their child as soon as possible?
So the benefit is really to protect the individual child, is to make sure that, given that COVID is out there in the community and is in places that they may not expect it, it's to protect that child from having the disease and getting a severe outcome from that disease. Obviously, secondary benefits to the community, to the people they live with, to grandparents and immunocompromised people they live around, about spreading the disease to others. But once again, I'm focused on the kid itself and the benefit to that kid.
I just want to jump over to a question not related to kids at the moment, but related to vaccines. Cindy asks, for the third dose of COVID-19 vaccine, will there be a choice of receiving either Pfizer or Moderna? She wants to know if one should stay consistent with the vaccine for their third dose or not.
Yeah, it's also a good question. And I don't think there's any difference between the two. Both of the mRNA vaccines work in a similar fashion. I know that some clinics will offer that choice for that third dose. I typically tell friends of mine who ask me what they should choose is to flip a coin, really.
And what about for someone who's received a double AstraZeneca?
So it shouldn't make a difference which Pfizer or Moderna product they receive as their third dose.
Okay. Jane is asking, why would you vaccinate children when they pose no risk and ruin their immune system? Why not leave the kids alone? Are you planning on vaccinating kids every 4 months?
So hopefully not, in terms of requiring a vaccination every 4 months. And we don't know exactly what the duration of immunity is, but hopefully in kids it lasts for quite some time. Why we vaccinate kids? I think there is a rate of severe disease in kids from getting COVID-19. Is it very high compared to adults? No, but it's higher than other diseases that we already vaccinate them against. And I wouldn't say it ruins their immune system. It in fact boosts their immune system and gives them more protection against this virus.
Can you give us a better sense about the dosages here? Because we are getting a lot of questions about that. Bigger doses for bigger kids, smaller doses for smaller kids versus ages. Like, how are they figuring that out?
Sure, it's based on age. And so it's based on what we think the immune system can do. And the way that these clinical trials work is that they tested multiple different sizes of doses in different aged children to figure out what the minimal dose required is to get the appropriate immune response. Because they want to balance side effects from a higher dose as well as effectiveness from an effective dose. And so what they did is they came up with this dose after testing in a number of children and found out this is the one that gives the best immune response while being as low as possible.
And one last question here. Alf is wanting to know what side effects we are seeing in children in the U.S. because they've already started doing this.
Yeah, the data has actually been very reassuring. It has been, I think, 3 to 4 million children between 5 and 11 vaccinated thus far. We haven't seen many reports at all, or I haven't seen anything at all about significant episodes of myocarditis or the other things that people are on the lookout that they saw in the older adolescents and 18 to 30 age range individuals. So that's reassuring. We'll wait to see, obviously, as more people get vaccinated across the United States as well.
Always learning a lot from you. Thank you, Dr. Srinivas Murthy, for being on the show tonight.
Good evening.
At 6:48, a live look at Victoria tonight. It's been a beautiful sunny day here on the south coast, but buckle up. The rain is set to return. Johanna breaks the forecast down. That's coming up.
As a child, I advocate for my rights because I don't have any other choice.
As a child, I advocate for my rights because it's not just me. Well, mainly I'm advocating for accessibility and to introduce proper accessible washrooms here in Canada called changing places, which would include an adult changing table and a lift. The reason I fight a lot for that is because my sister, she has cerebral palsy, she can't walk, she can't talk, and we kind of realized that she needs these washrooms. When she stopped fitting on the baby changing table, the only option we have is to put my sister on the floor, and she is already immunocompromised from her many disabilities. I'm trying to get into contact with hospitals. There are a lot of hospitals in my area that are being renovated. So we're trying to talk to them because even hospitals don't have these washrooms, and the hospitals are supposed to be there to help people like my sister. And there are thousands of other kids and young adults and adults and seniors in Canada that need these washrooms, which is really important for me, especially now with National Child Day.
When Mother Earth is under attack, what do we do?
Children's rights are connected to every other social issue there is. I focus on climate change because for me this is like the most urgent issue that we're dealing with right now. I'm part of my local Fridays for Future group, School Strike for Climate Halifax, and I do lots of other climate change work locally and nationally. For the entirety of 2020, I wrote a letter a week to the Prime Minister of Canada about climate change. And that was part of just a campaign of just making sure that people in power don't forget about this crisis, because as a young person who's going to be very affected by this crisis in the future, I can never forget about it. It's always in the back of my mind. Youth voices are clearly not being taken seriously, because if they were, we would have acted on climate change a long time ago. Being seen and heard means that your voice is actually heard. You have to actually hear what the children are saying, and you actually have to act on what the children are saying.
Mother Earth is under attack! What do we do? Stand up, fight back!
It's not just a me problem, it's a we problem.
Racism, sexism, homophobia, these aren't just adults' issues. These are issues that children also experience, and they experience them differently than adults do.
And that's why I fight, because it's not just me, it's not just my sister. It's thousands, it's millions of people who need these things, who need these rights, that are not having them right now.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is back to talk rain. Johanna, I think it's safe to say a lot of people are bracing for this storm. How do you think it's going to compare to the last one?
Well, Anita, I'm glad you asked that specifically, because I've been looking at some of these atmospheric river models south of the border, these scales that forecasters here in Canada are working to develop, hopefully sometime in the new year. So let me take you through, first of all, the projection for not one, but two atmospheric rivers between now and early next week. Take a look at the forecast model that I've got here. So this is just straight up precipitation. I haven't delineated between rain and snow, but pausing you Thursday, 1 a.m., you can see that stream of moisture that extends all the way down through Hawaii. Then a next surge will move in Friday overnight into Saturday. That one may even be stronger than this event. So it truly is a parade of storms, as we keep saying, taking us through record totals for November. What you're looking at right now is a snapshot of the forecast model from the group of scientists in California that we're basing our future category rating system on. So right now, the model is really honing in on this this Wednesday to Friday event as an atmospheric river, sort of 1 to 3. And you can see the yellow dots more towards the 3 end, up towards the central coastal section. So that's the bullseye. But in this system, AR1 to AR2 actually beneficial, because in California and in British Columbia, this is where we get a huge amount of our moisture. So we're sort of on that borderline between beneficial And then when the hazards outweigh the benefits, still looking to see things hone in over the next couple of days. And then that second atmospheric river looks much more powerful for the end of the week. Totals for the Fraser Valley could be close to 100 to 200 millimeters by early next week. And of course, we're watching for rising snow levels. 4 in Kelowna tomorrow, 0 up towards Williams Lake. Very cold air behind yesterday's cold front. Minus 22 was the wind chill for most of the day in Fort St. John. So a lot of snow has been left behind from that cold front on those mountain passes down around Merritt. Saw pictures throughout the show of the snowflakes falling. As we get into that temperature of 10 for Thursday, that means melting snow on top of the rain. And then we get a bit of a break Friday before that next round moves in. So we'll take it day by day, storm by storm, and at least, Anita, any single one of these storms, nothing like what we saw last week.
Okay, that is good news for a lot of people. Thank you, Jo.
You're welcome.
There have been plenty of stories emerging from the floods, but one horse would have quite the tale to tell. How did Winter handle her rescue? Well, that's coming up.
My name is Nathan Tebbins, and I like building random stuff in my basement. So this suit here is a Master Chief suit from the video game Halo 3. The specific armor set is called Mjolnir Mark 6. This whole suit is made out of EVA foam, which is the regular stuff like floor mats that you'd find at a gym or something. I cut it literally with just a box knife you buy at Home Depot and stick it together with contact cement. The only complex part really is this helmet, which is 3D printed. I had to print it in pieces because my printer is fairly small. My 3D CAD skills are very primitive, so I do use a lot of other people's resources. They put them online for free. Aaron Esser, who's a Canadian, lives near Grand Bend, who makes Nerf point of view videos, was looking for someone with a Master Chief suit to make a video related to Halo for the new game that's going to release on December 8th.
So I'm a big Halo fan, and the Master Chief suit's like the most iconic thing from the game, and he definitely nailed it.
Since the videos went out, I've gotten comments from people all over the world. You know, people are saying hi from Brazil and New Zealand. I mean, most of my audience is from Canada.
Nathan is very driven. He has a lot of initiative. He's a self-starter. He finishes a task at hand no matter how complicated it is. That's really just bringing a lot of that out when he does these kind of creations, because it has a lot of reward if he can stick through it to the end.
Do you play video games?
I play somewhat video games. Like, I've played Halo a bunch of times. I've tried to get into a couple of other things, but I haven't really had a whole lot of time to dive into that yet.
So it's more about having things in the real world for you as opposed to like sitting in your study and doing stuff.
Yeah, as cool as it is to have it in the video game, having it in real life, and especially because it's something I've made myself, that's just something that like most video game fans would just dream of having it in real life, and I'm able to do that, so I do.
This is Whoville. This is my interpretation from the 2018 animated movie. This one in particular was actually quite hard in the sense that there's not a lot of source material for it. Ironically, given that it features in a whole movie, but in the animation, it's hard to get any still images of it. And then it's so complicated, actually wrapping my brain around the geometry of everything took a while to sort of figure out. And then actually figuring out how to make it out of gingerbread was also quite the challenge. So we've been working away at this one since August. I think it's been a pretty hard year for a lot of people, and this was just a good opportunity to sort of, bring a smile to people's faces. It was really fun and an enjoyable project to begin with, but also as an opportunity to encourage people to bring in warm winter clothing, underwear, socks, gloves, mittens, toques, anything like that, anything that's new to bring in, and then you can get entered into a raffle to destroy Whoville. And while 100% of it is edible, being on display for a month and a half, especially in times of COVID, I wouldn't encourage anybody to actually eat it, so it's got to go somewhere, and why not have a good time and smash it?
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC's annual Food Bank Day is Friday, December 3rd.
Connect with your favorite CBC personalities virtually. Space is limited, so sign up today at cbc.ca/foodbankday. And CBC Vancouver's Stephen Quinn will moderate a panel of experts at a free UBC Dialogues discussion about responsible leadership in a post-pandemic world. Learn more at alumni.ubc.ca.
There are so many stories of animal rescues from the areas impacted by the floods, but this one tale is a step above the rest. That's Winter the horse getting airlifted last Friday from his home near Spence's Bridge. During the floods, Winter alerted his owners of the dangerous waters, giving them time to flee to higher ground. But Winter and his stablemates were trapped on the flooded farm on the Nicola River west of Kamloops. Thankfully, with the use of a special device called an Anderson sling, Winter did his best Pegasus impression and flew to safety. Just incredible. So happy to see that Winter is safe and sound. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. We've got lots more this week on what's coming up with the storm. We'll bring you all the details of its impacts. Have a good night.